Hi, welcome to Starz Recapped. Today I'm going to explain an American black horror comedy movie called The Menu, released in the year 2022, directed by Mylod. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. At the local marina, Tyler and his date Margot await the vessel that will transport them to a secluded island where they'll dine at Hawthorne, an exceptionally prestigious establishment overseen by the nation's most celebrated culinary artist. Tyler is a culinary enthusiast, captivated by this chef and the intricacies of haute cuisine in general. Upon the boat's arrival, the pair are astonished by the number of VIPs who will be accompanying them. These include Lillian, the food critic who brought the chef to prominence, and her editor Ted, aging actor George, accompanied by his assistant and girlfriend Felicity, and a trio of influential tech entrepreneurs, Dave, Soren, and Bryce. However, it's businessman Richard and his wife Anne who capture Margot's attention, as she recognizes Richard and wishes to avoid detection. Consequently, she strives to remain inconspicuous. During the voyage, they are served the first elaborate dish. Tyler raves about it while photographing it, but Margot remains unimpressed. Upon reaching the island, the maitre d' Elsa addresses Margot by an incorrect name, forcing Tyler to clarify that plans had changed and he was accompanied by a different companion, creating an uncomfortable situation. Before the meal, the guests are given a tour, during which Elsa showcases the facilities and explains that the restaurant staff are responsible for all hunting and farming, which is why they reside on the island. The chef also resides there, but his residence is off limits. They subsequently enter the restaurant, where they discover the open kitchen, affording them a view of the cooks at work. An elderly woman named Linda sits at one of the tables, appearing out of place. When Richard finally notices Margot, he requests his wife to exchange seats with him so he can have a clearer view. Elsa informs everyone that they are welcome to observe the cooks but photography is prohibited. Tyler immediately approaches the kitchen, pointing out the techniques being employed and posing numerous questions, prompting the cooks to request that he refrain from distracting them. At that moment, Chef Slowick arrives, and Elsa whispers something to him, causing him to gaze intently at Margot. The first offering is a complimentary appetizer. Lillian meticulously examines the food, carefully smelling and tasting each component, while Felicity is preoccupied with attempting to break up with George. Margot enjoys the dish but isn't particularly enthusiastic, leading Tyler to condescendingly explain its significance. Shortly thereafter, the first course is served. Slowick steps forward and claps his hands, causing all his cooks to simultaneously turn around like obedient soldiers. He then delivers a speech about his craft, reminding everyone that they should not merely eat, but rather savor and appreciate the food. Tyler attempts to interject, but is reprimanded by Slowick for interrupting. Despite the prohibition, Tyler continues to take photographs. For the second course, Slowick claps again and explains that bread is the food of the commoner, but since his guests are not common, they will not be served bread. The next dish is a breadless bread plate, consisting only of minute droplets of the savory accompaniments. Tyler is ecstatic, but Margot finds it insulting. Lillian observes that the emulsion appears slightly separated, and in response, a full bowl of it is sent to her table in a display of irony. The tech executives deem the joke excessive and request bread, but are denied even after revealing that they work for Doug Varick, the actual owner of the island. To silence them, Elsa eerily informs them that they will consume less than they desire and more than they deserve. Margot refuses to eat her dish, and Tyler attempts to take it for himself, inadvertently shattering a glass in the process. Slowick immediately approaches the table, and while Tyler attempts to apologize, the chef is more interested in understanding why Margot isn't eating. Margot points out the absence of food, and Slowick replies that he meticulously designed the portion sizes so that if she doesn't eat, she won't be satiated. Margot continues to refuse the dish, causing Slowick to depart, seemingly offended, and surprisingly check on Linda with concern. Margot glances at Richard and Anne notices, remarking that Margot resembles their deceased daughter. Richard feigns ignorance of Margot and diverts the conversation. With another clap, Slowick announces the third course, titled Memory, which prompts him to recount a memory of his family's past taco nights. He reveals that Linda is his mother, and that she has been intoxicated since his childhood. His father was an alcoholic as well, and one night, after Linda confronted him about his drinking, he attempted to strangle her with the phone cord. To protect his mother, young Slowick seized a pair of scissors and stabbed his father in the thigh, a deed he now regrets not having completed. To commemorate that particular taco night, the dish is a smoked chicken thigh served with a pair of scissors atop a phone cord. The tortillas were freshly made, but to add a touch of innovation, they were laser engraved. Everyone is disturbed by the narrative, but matters escalate when they discover the images on the tortillas. Lillian finds pictures of restaurants that closed due to her negative reviews, and Anne is shocked to see photographs of her husband's private life. One in particular depicts Richard with another woman, but Richard insists it's a prank. George finds images of his role as Dr. Sunshine, a film that flopped upon release, and the tech executives are alarmed to discover their company's tax records, revealing fabricated invoices. Elsa declines to explain how they obtained this information, and when the men threaten to shut down the establishment, Elsa cryptically states that it won't be necessary. Tyler notices images of himself photographing the food and assumes that Slowick despises him. Margot finds the images offensive and wishes to return the dish, but Tyler berates her, accusing her of childish behavior. Hurt, Margot heads to the restroom, and Elsa intercepts her, preventing her from entering the restricted silver door. Upon reaching the restroom, Margot approaches the window to smoke and observes an employee running with a pair of angel wings. At that moment, Slowick arrives and inquires why Margot has again refused to eat, expressing his hurt feelings. Margot simply states that she isn't hungry. Slowick also demands to know her true identity, and when she replies that she is simply Margot from Nebraska, he expresses disbelief. Shortly afterward, the cooks commence preparations for the fourth course, arranging a piece of fabric and decorations on the floor. Slowick introduces everyone to Jeremy, one of his sous chefs, who created the next dish, titled The Mess. Jeremy attended a prestigious culinary institute and has always aspired to work for Slowick. While Slowick acknowledges his talent, he doesn't consider Jeremy exceptional. Jeremy may desire a life of prestige like Slowick's, but Slowick believes his own life is filled with pressure, not to mention the disgruntled patrons and critics who fail to appreciate his work. Slowick asks Jeremy if he desires such a life, and upon Jeremy's negative response, Slowick kisses him on both cheeks and retreats before Jeremy draws a firearm. Slowick then announces the fourth course, and Jeremy takes his own life in front of everyone. The other cooks observe this with solemnity, showing no surprise, while the guests react with terror and recoil, with the exception of Tyler, who is enthralled. As the body is removed, Slowick instructs everyone to resume their seats and accept this as part of the performance. A debate ensues regarding the authenticity of the death, and Richard, having reached his limit, attempts to depart with Anne. Elsa intercepts them, stating that no boats are available. Richard persists, prompting Elsa to command the chefs to seize him and remove his ring finger. The guests erupt in further panic, excluding Tyler, who remains engrossed in his meal. As Richard writhes on the floor in agony, Elsa returns the discarded wedding ring to Anne. Slowick reiterates that this is part of the curated experience, and Lillian accepts it, but the others are increasingly apprehensive. Felicity urges George to speak with Slowick, assuming they are acquainted, but George confesses that he fabricated the connection to impress her. Elsa escorts Margot to the kitchen, where Slowick declares her to be an imposter. He discerns that she is not the Margot he expected, a discrepancy that poses a problem because she deviates from the original menu plan. Slowick demands to know whether Margot aligns with the guests or the restaurant, though he suggests it is irrelevant as everyone will perish tonight. Margot returns to her table in tears and strikes Tyler when he persists in discussing the food. The atmosphere in the restaurant is thick with tension and unease. Soren, losing control, attempts to shatter a window with a chair, but the glass is impervious. Elsa simply escorts him back to his seat. The subsequent course is a palate-cleansing tea, and Slowick uses the opportunity to inquire if anyone has any questions. Tyler poses a trivial question about the tea, but George intervenes, demanding an explanation. Slowick clarifies that they are elements of a tasting menu concept, a revelation that should come as no surprise. He cites Lillian as an example, characterizing her as a destructive force who causes restaurants to close due to her subjective preferences, and Ted as her enabler. The cooks deliver more separated emulsion to Lillian, and Elsa presents Margot with a kitchen timer, instructing her that she has 10 minutes. Anne then requests a doctor for Richard, prompting Slowick to point out that they have been among the most loyal patrons for 5 years, yet they cannot recall a single dish they have consumed there. Slowick explains that he strived to become an exclusive chef, but only recently realized that he has been striving to satisfy individuals who are inherently insatiable, much like his own mother. Since Slowick repeatedly refers to the establishment as his restaurant, Bryce reminds him that Doug Varick is the actual proprietor. Slowick retorts that he effectively owns Doug, and at that moment, Doug is revealed to be hanging outside, adorned with the angel wings. Dave attempts to bribe Slowick to spare him, and when Slowick refuses, he attempts to flee, only to be apprehended by the staff. Bryce notes that Doug sustained Slowick's business during the pandemic, but Slowick complains that Doug consistently questioned his menu choices. Elsa signals with her arms, and Doug is lowered into the sea until he drowns, prompting Slowick to announce his liberation before retiring to his office. Suddenly, the timer on Margot's table sounds, and she is summoned to Slowick's presence. Margot admits that she is not who she was expected to be, and Slowick reciprocates by confessing that he recognizes her as a fellow industry professional. He inquires why Margot was fixated on Richard, leading her to reveal that she is a sex worker. Richard had been one of the few clients who unsettled her, as he had requested her to impersonate his daughter during their encounter. Both Slowick and Margot concur that they once derived satisfaction from serving others, but that difficult clients have instilled in them a loathing for their professions. Subsequently, Slowick leads everyone outside. The next course is presented by sous chef Catherine, who explains that Slowick has propositioned her on numerous occasions, and she has consistently declined. Slowick did not dismiss her, but ceased making eye contact, an experience that inspired the subsequent dish, titled Man's Folly. Catherine then stabs Slowick in the leg and embraces him before staining his chef's uniform with blood, prompting him to offer an apology. The male guests are then given an opportunity to escape. They are granted a 45-second head start, after which the staff will pursue them. All the men except Tyler begin running, forcing Slowick to send him out as well, while Catherine escorts the women indoors. The women sample the sixth course while sharing a table with Catherine, who reveals that everyone dies was her concept. Lillian's compliments move her to tears, and the other women join in with their own compliments to maintain her composure. Anne inquires if Margot is acquainted with her husband, and Margot confirms that she is, but Anne refrains from further comment. Margot eventually discloses her real name as Erin and reveals that she is from Massachusetts. Outside, Tyler observes them through the window, resentful that he is missing a course. Meanwhile, the staff apprehends the fleeing men without difficulty, regardless of whether they sought refuge in the forest or the beach. Ted concealed himself in the smokehouse, and as a reward, he is presented with a passard egg. All the men are returned to the restaurant, and George sarcastically apologizes to Felicity for his shortcomings, prompting her to confess that she has been embezzling funds from him. George was already aware, and Felicity knew that he knew. Suddenly, Slowick announces that the menu cannot proceed as planned until they resolve an outstanding matter. He confronts Tyler, compelling him to admit that he had always been aware that tonight's menu included "Everyone Dies." Tyler had a date, but his girlfriend ended their relationship, so he hired Margot because the restaurant didn't accommodate solo diners, disregarding the fact that she would perish. Margot, enraged by this revelation, lashes out at Tyler, but the staff intervenes. Slowick then highlights Tyler's extensive knowledge of cuisine and presents him with a chef's uniform before pushing him into the kitchen, demanding that he cook for everyone, despite Tyler's reluctance. Tyler's cooking is a mess, especially as Slowick mocks him for being Mr. Knowledgeable Foodie, resulting in a disastrous final dish. Slowick tells Tyler that he is the reason the mystery has been drained from his art and whispers something in his ear that causes Tyler to remove the chef's jacket and flee in tears. Afterward, Slowick takes Margot aside to request a favor. To prepare dessert, they need a large barrel that is supposed to be in a corner, but Elsa forgot to retrieve it. Slowick wants Margot to fetch it, ignoring Elsa's offer to have the staff handle it. On her way out, Margot discovers that Tyler has taken his own life, but she remains indifferent. Slowick returns to the dining area, where George argues that this is unfair. Slowick explains that George is being punished because he saw Dr. Sunshine years ago and ruined the first day off he had in months. Felicity, on the other hand, will die because she graduated from Brown University without any student debt. Meanwhile, Margot reaches the smokehouse, but instead of grabbing the barrel, she grabs a knife. She then sneaks into Slowick's house, which is an exact replica of the restaurant, but with a bed. Margot attempts to exit through the silver door, but is intercepted by Elsa, who also has a knife and reminds her that this area is restricted. Elsa then attacks Margot, explaining that she doesn't want to be replaced. Margot defends herself with objects from the kitchen, pointing out that she has no desire to work there, but Elsa reveals that she didn't forget the barrel. Slowick simply never asked for it. Both women struggle on the floor, and while trying to prevent the knife from reaching her body, Margot accidentally kills Elsa. After her initial panic subsides, Margot takes Elsa's keys and opens the silver door. Inside, she finds a simple room containing Slowick's memories from when he was younger and happier, with a family and a job making hamburgers. There is also a radio in the room, which Margot attempts to use to call for help. Back in the restaurant, Bryce is presented with a cake because his friends informed the restaurant that it was his birthday. Margot suddenly interrupts, entering with a barrel through the main door. Slowick tells her that he used to be a monster, but everything he does today is pure. His chef's hands are so calloused that he can touch fire without feeling pain, because he can no longer be hurt. At that moment, a boat approaches the island, and Slowick realizes that Margot used the radio. The staff immediately cleans all traces of blood from everyone, and Slowick issues a threat. If the guests ask for help, an innocent man will die. Coast Guard Dale enters the restaurant and inquires about the situation, but no one dares to speak. Dale then recognizes George and asks for an autograph because he is a big fan of Dr. Sunshine, so George pretends to give him one. As Dale is about to leave, he discovers that the piece of paper actually says, "Help us," and draws a gun, prepared to defend the now emboldened guests. Dale keeps the gun trained on Slowick for a few seconds, only to suddenly turn and point it at the candle on Margot's table, revealing that it is merely a lighter shaped like a gun. Dale is not a Coast Guard, he is another member of Slowick's staff, and he now returns to the kitchen. Slowick expresses his disappointment in Margot for betraying him and declares her to be as bad as the other guests. Margot recalls what she saw in the house and decides to take a risk. She suddenly claps to get Slowick's attention, announcing that she doesn't like his food and that she would like to send it back. Slowick falls for Margot's manipulative tactics as she points out that all the dishes were an intellectual exercise rather than something to enjoy. She is still hungry, so she wants to eat a proper cheeseburger, not some fancy, deconstructed mess. For the first time that day, Slowick smiles and agrees to prepare a traditional cheeseburger with fries for $9.95. All the cooks watch with fascination as Slowick happily prepares a traditional cheeseburger, which he presents to Margot with pride. Margot takes a bite and approves of the taste, but she also thinks it is too much for her to finish and asks for the rest to go. Slowick, still in a trance, complies, and once Margot has her bag, she leaves a $10 bill and departs the restaurant. On her way out, Margot hesitates because the others are still in danger, but Anne gestures for her to leave. While Margot makes it to the harbor and escapes on the boat Dale left behind, Slowick reminds everyone that it is time to pay. The cost is $1,250 per head under a no-tip system, and everyone receives a bag of goodies that includes one of Doug's fingers. Everyone hands over their credit cards, and a moment later, Slowick announces that it is time for dessert. The cooks begin decorating the floor as if it were a plate, then they put chocolate hats and marshmallow vests on the guests. Slowick reminds everyone that they represent the ruin of his life and now they shall be part of it, so the dessert will be the most offensive assault on the human palate, the s'more. This is usually prepared over a fire, so Slowick grabs a lump of coal from the oven with his bare hands and announces a cleansing as he throws it onto the decorations the cooks left, igniting a fire that engulfs the restaurant and all the people within it. Meanwhile, Margot stops the boat to finish her cheeseburger while watching the restaurant burn, using the copy of the menu that came with the gift bag to wipe her mouth. That's my explanation for the movie, The Menu. So, what do you guys think about the movie? Write in the comment, turn on the notification and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.